Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
Itty Bit Pod Smash,
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer. We are your hosts.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right. And tonight, in honor of this June month being Pride Month, we wanted to have an episode where we talk about LGBTQ community and how they intersect with gaming. It's an episode that's a long time coming, and part of the reason why we delayed is because we wanted to have someone on the show who knows what they're talking about in this space. So we have invited my dear friend. I lived with him for like 7 years, dear roommate of mine. We've invited my friend Chris on the podcast. So Chris, thank you for joining us. And please introduce yourself. Tell our listeners who you are and why you're here tonight.
Hello, everybody. My name's Chris, or Christopher. You can call me either, because there are 1,000 Chris's in the world, and sometimes Christopher is a little bit more unique, surprisingly. Yeah, I'm here to talk about games, the things that we love so much.
Sweet. Thanks for coming on our show. Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Part of the reason we have guests on our show is we want to hear from other folks, people who are in their field, doing their thing.
Right, in their
'cause we're
spaces.
not.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
Here you are. Thank you for throwing your voice into our mix.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I for background, like I said, I lived with him for a long time. So he's a good friend of mine, and he has shown up once before in this show space. He and I streamed Guild Wars when my daughter was fairly newborn and screamed half the time. It was great. You go check it out. It should be on YouTube. You can check it out.
Right.
Chris held the show together for me, I think. So
I just bought Guild Wars 2. I didn't have it. It was half off, so I was like, yeah, I'll buy it. With not the newest expansion, but the other ones. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Great buy.
And I've never played it, so there you go.
We're gonna
Brand
have to
new.
talk. We're gonna have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah, I'm in.
And now these two are playing in my D&D campaign together. So
We are.
Yeah.
that's nowhere on the internet. So sorry, folks. That's just for me.
Yeah.
Just for me to enjoy. Cool, guys. All right. Well, we will talk more about our topic, and we'll talk more about Pride Month in a little bit. But first of all, we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what is everyone drinking tonight or not drinking?
Our guest, do you want to speak first? Do you have something?
Yeah, I'm drinking water
Whoa.
Wow.
because I need to be drinking water and hydrating and all that good stuff. And yeah, try to be
How's
healthy and cut some of the carbs out. So
How's the water quality these days in Augusta County?
I'd say quite delicious, and you know, not as much calcium. I don't know.
Is it brewed with local ingredients?
Yeah, local minerals and such.
Yeah, okay,
That's where we're going with that.
Yep, that's it.
That's funny. You are in the county over from me. I'm in Albemarle, so that's funny. We're neighbors.
Oh,
We're
that's
county
wait,
neighbors.
wait, where are you living?
Crozet.
Oh wow, you're literally right around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he left me.
We should hang out sometime. Yep.
Yeah, Dan. Why aren't
That'd be
you
awesome.
over here?
He
Penguin.
left me. I did not. I had no choice in the matter, and still have no choice in the matter. So just throwing that out there.
I mean, what does it say if your family and your friends all live in a different area? I mean, just saying.
Okay, all right. Convince my brother-in-law to move, because that's the only piece right now. We would move in a heartbeat if you could convince my brother-in-law to uproot his family and move there. Because till then, I'm pretty sure I'm stuck here.
Challenge
With
accepted. All right.
Mecca.
Right.
All right.
Hey, it's funny. The audience might be listening to be like, oh, wow, they're talking about where they live. We had an entire episode with a guest show called The Flock that's all about the gaming communities in Virginia. So if you need some context to why we care about where we're living across Virginia and gaming spaces, there you go. You can go check that out. And then maybe this will be a little bit more. I'm just trying to save a tangent and make it relevant.
Right.
Yeah, this has gotten fairly tangential. So, Termite, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Basic City out of Waynesboro, beer company. I was given this 4-pack for recompense over Christmas. I completely forgot. I bought a 4-pack of Mad Elf Ale Grand Cru edition, and I gave it to my neighbor. And then I come back from our trip from Virginia Beach yesterday, and he's got a 4-pack for me of this because he was there. This is called the Brewer's Passion Project, And on the can, we like to read the can on the show. Craft beer brewed with passion by the brewers of Basic City Beer Company. And that's it. So I don't know if there's actually passion fruit in here because it doesn't. I mean, it's got a very dark color and it's not
see
very
the passion.
seafood.
I can
So
Yes.
it's amazing. It tastes
Passion
awesome.
kind of floats to the top, and
Yeah, it's what it does. It's definitely an IPA for sure, but it
hoppy?
doesn't have like. It's not fruity and juicy. It's more like hopper and like a lager almost. It's wild. So it's good. I like it a lot. 6.3% ABV. And so thanks, neighbor, for that.
thanks, neighbor.
What are you drinking?
I am just drinking a staple for myself. Triple. Sorry. Yeah, it is a triple. A sour monkey. Sour monkey. It was such a nice day outside today. I felt like sour was in order. It was between this and a milk stout. So that's all I got in my fridge right now. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go with the sour. It feels more enjoyable on a day like today and enjoyable to spend with such enjoyable company. So, all right, cool. Well, is there anything you wanted to banter about? I'd rather leave more time for our interview, our little guest to talk today. So we could just move straight to our first segment.
I do have a banter.
Okay.
I lied to you both.
Quick banter.
And it shows my beer ignorance. This is by far not an IPA. This is an ESB, an English Standard Bitter. Totally different spec. That's why I was like, wait. So that's it. That's the only banter.
You're fired.
I just had to clear the record.
You are fired. You're fired. Get out. Chris is now. It's now Penguin and Chris.
To mix up IPA with any other style is a travesty to anyone who hates IPAs.
You're offended. Yeah, you're fired. You offended everyone. Hashtag Termite is canceled for mixing ESB.
The most offensive thing this episode.
That's
right
it.
there.
It's gonna be. That is 100%. 100%. That is the most offensive thing this episode. Cool. Well, then Termite abusing the acronyms, the sacred beer acronyms, is definitely not our favorite thing. But
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Or 80-bit pod smash is our favorite thing. You still can't get it right, even if we changed it a few episodes ago.
We did change it. Right. I still can't get it right.
Still can't get it right. Favorite Things is a segment of our show where we share with you something that we are excited about, or something that intrigued us, or something that stimulated our minds, and something that we are just excited about and want to share this week so that you might go out and find your next favorite thing. So let our guest share first. Chris, what is your favorite thing tonight?
My favorite thing tonight?
Well, this week. Recently. The thing that you're like, if I could share this with everybody right now, I would share it. I would have everyone have it.
You know, I think everybody should have a garden, because gardens are lovely, and this is the first time in my life I've ever had my own home and my own space to put a garden in, where I felt like I could. And one of those little lovely things you come home to and you're like, their flowers are blooming. It's pretty. It's fun to look at. You see nice colors, and you put work into it, and then it starts to grow, and all these little plants are popping up all over my yard, and they've all got little blooms that are popping up too. It's fun. It's a new thing for me, so I'm enjoying it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I kill plants just by looking at them most of the time. So my relationship with plants is very, very destructive. Whether it's mowing my lawn or weeding my garden, I don't think I touch plants in a productive way ever. Eating them, I prepare them to be devoured. That's about my relationship with plants typically. So,
wow.
My favorite thing is Stranger Things. I've finally fired up season 4, and it's amazing. It's so good. So, like, I've seen that people are criticizing it for not being 80s nostalgia enough, which is absurd. It's so absurd because, like, literally the first episode, they, like, cut together both a, like, basketball championship game, which is, like, so 80s movie, and then interspersed it with like a D&D.
That was
like,
awesome.
Final
that was
campaign down to like the final shot bouncing off the backboard, and almost like, is it going to go in? Is it going to go in? Versus the dice roll where it's like, what's it going to be? Is it going to land on a 20? And it was so good. No, what they've brought back this season that they've actually been missing for like the last 2 seasons is the horror. Like seasons 2 and 3 kind of in my mind, which is fine because I loved seasons 2 and 3, but they became more of like a 80s teen drama mixed with 80s action movies versus season 1 was like an homage to 80s horror, and they've brought that back like First episode was like right out of Sam Raimi, Evil Dead. They did a Carrie. Homage. I'm just sitting there like the 80s horror fan in me is like, yes. So it's so good. Yeah, Stranger Things season 4. If you're not a Stranger Things fan and have a Netflix account, it's like the only reason to have a Netflix account anymore. So you should watch it. It's so good.
Kind of is their like best thing. Yeah.
It's all they got left.
We finished what they are giving us because they split season 4 into 2 volumes. So we finished the first volume last night. So we're caught up.
Nice.
And
I'm like an hour away. We right before this we were watching the 7th episode.
We have to talk about that later.
My
favorite thing is, I don't think I've talked about this on the show because I was a little nervous of its secret slipping out, but I got my son, who's 7 years old, for his birthday, his very first video game console of his own. And that is a Nintendo Switch Lite. And a copy of Animal Crossing, and he loves Sonic, and he is obsessed with Sonic Colors because my grandma got it for my brother's Switch, and he played it over there. So I got him that. And he's playing Animal Crossing, and he's like asking me all the things, but he's going through all the motions that I went through as his age that I can actually remember. Because 7 years old, I'm old enough to like have memories. I had a Game Boy, and I'd play in the car, but the batteries would run out. I need new batteries. So he's talking about like, is it charging? I got to plug it in. I got to make sure it's charged. And we took this road trip to Virginia Beach, and like I told him he could just play his Switch. He's got 1 week of school left. And so I'm like laxed on the gaming during the school week and like letting him play. And he's running around. He's trying to take care of it, trying to keep it charged. And he's asking all these questions about Animal Crossing. And I'm just living my 7-year-old self all over again because he's doing exactly what I did. And it's so fun.
7?
So,
he's 7.
Yeah, he's 7. Yeah,
I'm old.
And he doesn't know this, but I'm getting Pokemon Scarlet, and I'm getting him a copy of Violet, and that'll be his first Pokemon game. And I can't wait. Like he knows Pokemon, he knows the show, he's watched the anime, and he's got some cards, and so he's familiar with the creatures, and like he's familiar with the concept of catching them and like Pokeballs and stuff. But I'm super excited for him to actually get like a story attached to it and start building his own love and appreciation for Pokemon. So I'm excited.
As a side note, since you brought it up, can we quickly talk briefly about how unreasonably attractive the new professors in Scarlet and Violet are? It's like not gorgeous. Even funny. They are like as much as a pixelated video game character can be attractive. Like, what are they? Toro and Sada or whatever. Like, they're insanely hot human video game humans.
Yes. Yep.
Like both of them. I'm not like yes, both of them. In honor, I guess I'll say in honor of Pride Month, I will say like Professor Toro is a very, very handsome looking rendered video game man.
Yep. And I love that there is he looks kind of Brazilian or Latin American, or like he's brown.
All
he's
Spanish.
Well, Spanish, in the same way that the Galarian region was inspired by England, the new region is inspired by Spain.
Yep.
Yeah.
In fact, Toro and Sada, pasada is Spanish for past, and futuro is Spanish for future. So they think it's all
that makes sense. And then we have, so for the first
time she's wearing like
she's
caveman clothing, and he's wearing like futuristic stuff, and the legendary is like a giant, like a primal one, and then there's like a future one. It's all past future stuff. It's all it's all connected. Violet and Scarlet. Yeah,
it's gonna be good. But I love that they split the professor. Instead of having one professor in both games, there's now 2 different characters.
It's the first time.
First time ever. Yeah.
Game Freak, they're innovating. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy how innovative they are. They
take
now there's
steps.
2 professors. Tiny little baby steps.
They innovate in tiny increments,
ridiculously dumb ways. Yes, no, I love it. I'll probably get it by virtue of the fact that like there's nothing else coming out this fall. So
year.
It's like year. Yeah, pretty much. It's like. It's Forspoken, and Callisto Protocol has now made it to my watch list. Tunic is sort of in the back of my mind since it's coming out for PlayStation on the 27th, and then Violet,
Stray.
And Scarlet.
Don't forget about Stray, July 19th.
Yeah, I mean, I'll maybe check it out. I just it depends on how
free. Oh, never mind. You have to upgrade your PS Plus.
Yeah. I have to engage in Sony's new predatory business practice. Oh man, sorry, I'm not doing that. All right. Okay, cool. Well, that is favorite things. Yay! Which leads us to the last segment of our show, which is DLC. Termite, what does DLC stand for?
Downloadable content. It is a segment of our show that, yes, it's like downloadable content that is either adjacent to our topic or not, but is add-on content. But the difference between DLC and downloadable content is that just like the price of our show, this is free. It costs you nothing. There's no ads. So
free
DLC.
DLC.
An extra little bit that we do on the side.
Right.
So what do we got? What are we doing?
A conversation you wouldn't necessarily normally have about video games. So I want you guys to each pick a video game character that is a cis, white, straight, Western, youngish male, which is the default for video game characters. It could be any video game character. It could be old video game character, new video game character. It could be a main character. It could be a side character. It could be sort of like even a spin-off character. Pick me a video game character, and we're going to talk about what they would look like if they were either not that or designed by someone who is not that. And what would that look like? So you got your pick in your head. We're kind of picking on Activision Blizzard's little diversity algorithm crap they released recently.
Oh yeah,
and so yeah, except we're not. Except unlike them, we're even in an effort to make fun of them, we're still not going as far as them into the absurdity of trying to score these diverse characters. So, got your video game characters, everyone?
I have one.
All right,
Chris,
shall we let
first?
I was gonna say, let our guest of honor go first.
I think, I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's an interesting thought. But take somebody, Kratos. All right, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go to him.
Great one. Great Kratos. Yep,
love it.
I think he should have been Goddess of War. And the question would be, how well would that have sold? How well would a female strong lead for what? How many games does he have? 4, 5?
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I think the question here would be like, look at Lara Croft and
there
Tomb
you
Raider.
go. That's where I was going. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so like she did well. And if you would have looked at the early God of War games and you replaced Kratos with a female, it would have sold probably just as well because the target audience would have been the same. And that lies the problem. The female Kratos would have been like a G-string bikini.
Yeah,
and
that's very true. Yep.
And super over a family-friendly podcast, but like super revealing, non-modest model, period.
Right.
And that would have been appealing. Therefore, it could have had the same effect. But it wouldn't have the same effect because like there was the whole core of its game was like almost toxic masculinity, this like macho, grungy, machismo, no emotions, like so the whole tone of the game would have been entirely different. But
now if they did a game now, that would
they
be
could
different,
nail it
right?
now. Yeah, right.
Like
so
imagine if they
Kratos.
had or not even modern Kratos. What if they did a spin-off with the new girl that's supposed to be Atreus's girlfriend? I'm blanking on her name right now, but like, what if that was the next protagonist and they were actually going to spend the next game setting up her? That would be sick. Yeah, for Chris's reference, she's portrayed as an African American girl, so she's got 2 avenues of diversity and is probably going to be a very compelling character, all things considered. So like, that would be a really interesting kind of like inherit, because everyone sort of thinks Atreus is going to inherit the franchise, but it would be really awesome if they kind of flipped that on its head and had
be amazing. I would prefer that.
Inherit it. Yeah, I agree.
And side note, it would have been awesome to experience a game like God of War, and if you use the analogy of how they explored fatherhood, if they'd have done that with motherhood, because there's no mother
we've
game,
had that.
As we've talked about. Yeah,
we've had that. Yep.
And so like having a mom. Yeah.
Well, I almost thought it would have been cooler to have Atreus be a girl, but then I realized that would have been really close to what The Last of Us.
Right.
That would have been almost identical to what The Last of Us has done.
Yep.
With Ellie sort of taking over.
I bet you were in a boardroom as a fly in a dream at some point, and someone brought that up, and we're like,
Probably.
We can't do that. Because Sony's like, nope, we're doing that.
Yeah, we already did that, guys. Yeah, that's funny. Cool. All right, Termite, do you have a pick?
I do, and it's the one that I was actually vocally bitter when I saw the announcement trailer forever ago, and this is Cal Kestis from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, definitely.
I was so bummed.
Dude, did you see
this?
Did you see that it came out recently that the Respawn's team actually presented originally a female character for that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they got shot down.
Yeah.
EA's executives were like, nope, not happening. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
And Disney has a little hand in that too, because they're responsible for their IP and they're very controlling over their IP, and so they signed off on this. But here we are in a world like Star Wars where there's an infinite amount of other types of races and shapes and sizes of everything. Like, why did we land on this? I don't understand. I still don't, even after playing the game. I kind of just sucked it up to deal with it because the game is awesome and it does.
Well, the irony is that the female character they did introduce in that game, well, 2 of the female characters, but particularly the witch one, the night witch girl or whatever, she was awesome. She was such a more interesting character in so many ways than Cal was. Yeah.
So I don't know how else I could like go on about what it would look like if there was a different type of Jedi other than a white male, because Star Wars is dabbling in that regard. So yeah, there could just be an infinite amount of awesome depth and meaning in different viewpoints than what we've seen before. We don't need another Anakin clone. Come on.
Sure.
Come
I'm
on.
gonna do a twist on my answer, and instead of actually changing the main character's positionality, I'm going to literally replace him with another character in the story that has different positionality. Let's see Final Fantasy VII with Barrett as the lead.
Yeah.
As the main character.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
The
And
entire
there's so
thing,
much
just
with
take
him.
Cloud out of it. Have Cloud get hit by a train in the first, like just an alternate timeline where Barrett has to like carry the torch himself. That's what I want.
And a whole other aspect is like the adoption of Marlene.
Right.
And like, that's a whole
no,
thing.
that
and
entire being his driving motivation as opposed to Cloud and all of his like ladies and all of his romances. Like, no, like the trend right now is all about parenthood as being like the primary love story of the video games. Like, let's lean into that. His story is so much more compelling in my mind than Cloud's at this point. So
yes,
Cloud could take a sword to the chest and we'd be happy.
Instead of the game would be more peppy and interesting because Cloud's not in it, dragging everyone down with his ennui. Yep,
he is pretty emo. Yeah,
he is. I love Cloud. I can never say too many bad things about Cloud. He's a perfectly fine character, but it was funny because I was talking to Chris about we were discussing this before the episode, Termite, and I mused to him that I find it interesting culturally speaking that like, because we talked about like, if they were designed by someone who's not a white guy, well, think about all the Final Fantasy Final Fantasy protagonists over the years that have been like white, like portrayed as Western looking white men.
Yeah,
they were all designed by Japanese men. It's very interesting. Now they have the anime hair, but still it's blonde and oftentimes blue-eyed men.
Yeah. It is a known thing that like Japan and Asia is like infatuated with the West and Western culture, and so there's a weird like they love American culture and like American things, and they were marketing towards us. So like,
absolutely,
their motivation there. And I'm
sure.
speaking ignorantly as someone who doesn't know a single Japanese person, but that's just what I've read and what I've heard.
It's refreshing because I'm playing Ghostwire Tokyo now, and the protagonist it was designed by a Japanese team, and the protagonist is Japanese, like. And he's a Japanese man, and you can actually they give you the default option is Japanese language. So
cool.
It's refreshing. I'm like, this feels more right than pretty much like every game I grew up with. Crazy. Cool. All right. Well, that I think is our diversify a character DLC. Which leads us to our main topic. So speaking of diversity, tonight we are talking about the LGBTQ plus community and the issues they face and how all those things relate to gaming, the problems, I should say, that they encounter as a community, and how that has sort of intertwined and intersected with gaming over the years. And so part of the reason why we have our guest on today is so that he can correct us if we are wrong about things, but also share his experiences in this space. So I want to give a couple of disclaimers. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this episode has been a long time coming. We should have done this a long time ago. I can't speak for Termite, but I can speak for myself and say that I have experienced a lot of growth in my viewpoint on this issue since 2017. Oh my gosh, almost 5 years ago we started this podcast. So in 5 years, I think, grown significantly in my viewpoint on this issue. And so it's better late than never, but we're at a better place, or I'm at a better place now to have this conversation, I think, than I was in 2017. So that's kind of a disclaimer, sort of a like, sorry, we're late, but better late than never, right? And then finally, this is typically we are a family-friendly podcast, and we do strive to continue to be that. The nature of this topic means that we're going to be discussing human sexuality. So if you're with your kids, it might be one to skip if you haven't already had these conversations with them. So we'll go ahead
or trust us and walk your kid right through this conversation because they're going to hear it somewhere anyway.
That's true.
Here we are.
I would rather their children hear it from their parents, not from
from us.
You or I. I love you, and I trust that you will talk to your son about that conversation the way he needs to hear. But random kids out there, talk to your parents. So great, awesome. Let's talk about video games. First and foremost, we're a gaming podcast. So as someone who loves games, Chris, passionate about games, let's start there. What do you love about games? What is your favorite game of all time, and what are you playing right now?
Oh man, where to start?
Yeah,
there's so many things I love about games. I think some of my favorite things are are being allowed to go into a fantasy world, a world of creativity. Because all games have creators and people that come together to you know, put together a narrative, to put together some kind of world that is in many ways not like our worlds, but in some ways like our world.
Mhm.
They progress narratives, and they deal with issues and things that we deal with in our real world, but they do it in a way that helps people understand and digest it, because it's in a fantasy world. It's in a realm that is a world that is far away from where they are, and I love that aspect. I also love the ability to create things yourself. So games that allow
Mhm.
customization and character development and character creation. I love those games because I think it's an opportunity for you to put what tools they've made with whatever game they've created together, to create something that you can express yourself in, or what it is that you're interested in, or you can be something completely different than what you are in real life. And I think that's a wonderful and beautiful thing. It allows a lot of space for imagination. It's very much to me sometimes like taking a good book and becoming a character in that book, or creating a character in that book, depending on what
Mhm.
type of game you play. My favorite game of all time. That's a hard one. I would ooh, I'd kind of have to
You
say
can give me a top 3. I can give you a top 3 if you're just like if there's a couple that you just can't choose between. Throw me your top 3.
I'll,
Or a franchise.
I'll throw you a franchise because I
A
think that's
franchise. That's good.
probably
That's good.
so
Yeah.
the Pokemon franchise is probably my favorite. It is
Yeah.
probably one of the most simple franchises. Is this Every game is the same. It's the same thing. You do the same thing every single game, but it sells, and I buy every single one of them.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't mind that simplicity, and I think there's a ton of creativity that goes into every new Pokemon, and there's so many Easter eggs within that game too as to why they created this specific Pokemon with this name, and it's actually it's fascinating. It's really fun to dive into, but
I think you're the first person to say Pokemon of all of our
I love it.
guests. We've
I
gotten a
love it.
few unique answers. For a long time, the only answer we ever got was Zelda.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that tells you our guests were consistently
Yeah.
Zelda fans for a
Yeah,
while,
I
but
mean,
still.
it's like those are so many good games. There's so many great games, and games that have affected me into my adulthood and the way I see certain things because of
Yeah.
some of those narratives. But I don't know. I think that was one of the games that I always had on my Game Boy, and
Yeah.
all the way up until Switch, where it is now. But I've always played them. I've always played them. Except for Gen 5. I skipped black and white for some reason. I don't know what was going on in my life during that time, but that's the only generation I missed and still have yet to play through. But every other generation I have, so.
I was going to ask which generation of Pokemon is your favorite.
Oh man, that's a hard one.
It's a hard one to tell how much he loves Gen 1 because it's obviously the best. There's never been any
And no.
generation better than Gen 1.
Gen 1 has its gems, but no. I really enjoyed probably Gen 6 and Gen 7. So I actually really enjoyed the Kalos region, which is designed
Hmm.
after France.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the Lola region, was a wonderful
Yeah.
generation too. So they're also, well, they're similar, same narrative ish, but they have their every game has their little nuances and their little elements that are different. And I feel like Kalos. I mean, they did Japan regions for the first couple, and then Gen 5, which I missed, was very much designed after USA, and then they went to France in Gen 6, and then they went to Hawaii or Alola
Yep.
in Gen 7.
Yeah.
And I think those two, more so than any other generation, they really did a lot of research into the culture,
Yeah.
of those two places, and they brought elements into the game like
Hmm.
malasadas are really big in
Yeah.
Hawaii,
And
like
they're
little.
so good.
I
Oh,
have yet to have one. I really want to
they're
have one.
awesome. Yeah.
But there's so many little things like that that I just absolutely love about those games. So I would say 6 and 7. I did enjoy Sword and Shield. Gala region was actually really fun too for its own reasons. Mega Evolution though was so much better than Gigantamax. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Um, but there's fun little elements to those regions that I thought they brought in 6 and 7. So those are my
Sweet.
favorites in there. What
Awesome.
am I playing now? I am intermittently playing some Sword and Shield, not really much at all anymore because it's kind of burned out of things to do in that. I am playing Pokemon Unite because that's kind of a quick and easy hop on, get your Pokemon fix for the day. And then I'm also playing Guild Wars 2, the most recent expansion, End of Dragons, which is phenomenal. But again, I've also run out of things to do in that, to work on in that game as well. So I'm kind of in on a little bit of a dry spell right now with
You're playing something. There's something else you're playing.
there is
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that the answer you're looking for?
That is the answer I'm looking for.
But yeah, no, that's probably it. I'm eagerly anticipating Scarlet and Violet coming out because that's going to be a blast. I'm
Nice. All right. Okay, cool. Well, as we mentioned on the top of the episode, it is Pride Month, so it is a sort of celebration of all things in the LGBTQ space. The celebration has been going on. By the time the episode airs, the celebration has been going on for 3 weeks. So, and I think the big one is happening. You said it's happening the weekend after we're recording this. So this coming weekend is Pride in DC, right?
correct. Yep.
Nice.
Ooh.
Awesome. That is exciting that that celebration is going on. And so this episode will air a week after that, I guess. And yeah, so we wanted to have this episode where we talked about the LGBT community. And so we wanted to have someone on this podcast who knows what they're talking about. So as being someone in this space, would you speak to your experience being out of the closet and as a member of the LGBTQ community? Would you talk a little bit about how that's impacted your life and what your experience has been like for your life?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 34 and I came out 4 years ago. So when I turned 30, I kind of decided like it's time. It's time that I'm honest with myself and honest with everybody around me. So I don't know if I would call me an expert because I feel like there's a lot of things that I'm still learning myself.
Absolutely.
And there's only certain things that I can talk to because I'm only a G within the community.
You can only be one, though, to my understanding. So,
right.
Really?
But
I don't know. Is that true?
Oh.
Maybe that's not true.
I don't think that's true. But
Okay, yeah, you're right. Never mind. There's ways in which you can be more.
we can
but it's not
identify
like a
many
collection.
different ways.
It's
No.
not like a competition, though, as to how many of the letters you can collect. It shouldn't be, at least.
Right. But anyway, no. So it has been a journey to say the least. But it has been nice, I guess, the past 4 years at least being able to be fully honest about every facet of my life instead of most facets of my life and hiding one facet of my life, which I had done for 30 years, which for some people is a really long time, but
It sounds awful.
it was a very long time. But I'm still learning. I'm still learning how to be out and what that looks like, what's different in that, and there's a lot of freedom in that. But yeah, it's been a challenging experience. I think there's parts that are easy. There's parts that are good to be able to be yourself fully and also have an excuse as to why you love certain things like Pokemon and and I don't know, there's less judgment, I think, in a world where you're accepted as being gay versus being straight and having to conform to certain things. But
which, let's be clear, if you are straight and have a wall full of Pokemon, that is 100% okay, and you should feel no shame about that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But what you're talking about is the world sometimes does, and so, being able to sort of sidestep some of that unnecessary pain, I think, is what you're trying to get at. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. That's a good way to put it. So
yeah.
But yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. Like, we're very happy you're here, and I'm happy that you're in my life and have been in my life for so long, and are kind of in this place now where you're able to be fully you in a way that I haven't gotten to experience until the last 4 years, right? So
Right.
that again, just speaking from experience as your friend, like that's been it's been the same Chris, but also a different Chris at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are video games. We're talking about tonight video games and LGBTQ plus experiences. So let's combine those two together and ask this next question. So, what has your experience been like being a gamer? And however you would like to elaborate on that, you may go you may go on ahead and do so.
Well, Penguin, do you mean a GAYMER?
That is, I think, what I mean. A term that I just found out about today was not an offensive term.
Yeah.
No, there's an entire subreddit and a massive gaming community uses that lingo. There's T-shirts. It's a whole
That's
thing.
awesome.
Yeah.
They own
Yeah.
it, and it's so cool. And I
it's
did
awesome,
not
yeah.
know it until today.
It literally is the simplest way to just say, hey, we're gay, we like video games, so we're gamers. Yay!
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yay!
I mean, it's pretty. It helps. But sorry, what was your question, Dan?
My question was, what? Now I can ask the whole question.
Right.
So what's your experience been like as a gamer, and how have things in the industry and culture changed in how it relates to the wider LGBT community? What challenges do you still face, and what challenges do you face that lesbians, bisexuals, and the rest might not face, and what are issues do you think they face that you don't? Does it make sense? It's a big question. It's a lot of questions.
Let me break that down a little bit.
Let's break it up. Yeah, let's break it up into chunks. Yep.
All right.
So start as your experience. Yeah, what's your experience been like in this particular very unique space?
Well, going back to kind of what I was saying earlier about games being that fantasy place, that narrative place that you don't always experience, or that you experience a little bit differently through that medium. I think the gaming community is also can be, depending on where you are, a very safe place to be yourself, to be expressive. When you're gay and you're closeted, you desire, what you want to do is you want to be in a space where you're safe, for one, but for two, where you can express yourself and not have to feel judgment.
Yeah.
Because most people, or a lot of people that are out in some spaces, do feel judgment, and around some people feel that, and that is not something that any of us really particularly enjoy. So games are a great avenue for being in communities. I mean, it is a massive community of all types of people, but it's a space where you can be social. And again, again, depending on the gaming community, because I can think of some pretty toxic gaming communities that are not safe places.
Right.
But there are a lot of places that are very safe, and a lot of games that are a good place to be out and to talk about things in the real world and outside of video games in a safe way. Yeah, so I would say that's an aspect of gaming that I, as a gay person, have enjoyed, is
Mm-hmm.
being able to have somewhere to go and play games and be myself, be whatever I want to be. Actually,
Of
and you
course,
can't
yeah.
be that in a video game world. So
Yeah, I imagine too there are plenty of spaces in gaming communities where it's like it doesn't matter what your sexuality is.
Right.
Like you're all playing the game together and having fun, and that I imagine can be liberating because it's one part anonymity and one part like we're not here to like do the normal social hierarchy contests, right? We're just here to play games, and your quote unquote hierarchy is established based on like how effective you are in the game, right? So
Right.
I like not saying that's like doesn't have its own pitfalls and stuff, but I imagine that would be pretty liberating to just be like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are or what you like. What matters is that you're here and having fun together.
Yeah. And I think too, like, again, location where you live in the real world, you tend to see these patterns of thought, or especially the smaller towns that you live in. There's a lot more similarity in thought, which doesn't always allow for wiggle room of thought. So when you're
Yeah.
in these massive online communities, gaming communities, or whatever it is, it's a space where there are more minds, and minds from many places in the world. So you might have that person that's really hateful, but you might also have a lot more people who are like, oh, hey, that's okay that you are gay in real life, or whatever, if you
Yeah.
choose to share that, because maybe you don't have another place in your real community that you can share that, and this is the only place where you can say, I'm gay, and feel supported. So it's a really positive thing, I think, or can be a very positive place. It can also be, depending on, again, the community, it can also be very toxic. So
right.
yeah.
It's definitely a double-edged sword, right? The communities, any community online, period, but like gaming communities are renowned. It's so fun to talk, with you who have had a lot of positive experiences with online gaming communities. When like people think of online gaming communities, I think people, especially outside of gaming spaces, when they think of it, they think of like, the
kids living in their basements, parents,
right,
whatever. And
yeah,
it's just
like man children who are like, let's have Confederate flags on their walls, MAGA posters, and then also are screaming obscenities and hateful things to people who beat them on an online video game. Like that's what people's typical like perception of gamers, they think of the 4chan, right? Like think of the 8chan and 4chan gamers, and not
No, it's not that at all.
the
Yeah.
communities, right, that you're talking about and speaking to here. And it's like, again, getting the opportunity to talk with you about these things is great in helping sort of make people aware that, like, nope, gaming communities are way more diverse than people might think. We just got off the cusp of doing a whole series, about talking to video games about non-gamers, and this is just sort of like a nice sort of natural sort of trend in that same direction of being like, they're not what you think. The spaces are not what you think they are. So
I know
that's great. Thank you
where
for
I
that.
see a lot of rubber meeting the road in the sense of the toxicity in gaming spaces are any influencers or anyone who's out publicly or has like a public profile, like Twitch streamers, people like journalists, etc., that are a member of the LGBTQ community will get so much more hate and so much more ridicule and so much more criticism just because they're non-binary, non-cisgendered people, or they're not straight. And so that is an aspect of the game. I guess, Chris, you're not a public facing person that I'm aware of, unless you have an article or a website that I need to go check out right away.
No, I'm not.
So like, it's wonderful to hear kind of boots on the ground as a gamer person, as just someone who consumes games and plays games with friends online in a private space. Like, there's a place to be yourself that's completely safe. And that is wonderful and absolutely beautiful, especially in this world that we live in today, that you can get that from somewhere and not feel the pressure to come out, even, because that's a whole thing. Like, people are pressuring you to come out, go out, get out, but you're not ready. And like, it's a very deeply personal and very emotional and thing. And so like, that needs to be treated as such. But anyway, I digress. So cool. People that are public facing in the gaming spaces will wait. They receive so much harder feedback than anyone else.
They do, but I think they also receive hard support too. And I think, and depending on who they are, where they public, who sees their content, there's also a lot of them that get really good support too, and they need that support. But it's honestly, it's like anything. And I mean, that's just the medium of the internet. Is you can say I love pepperoni pizza, and you're like, man, how could anybody not like pepperoni pizza? But there could be 10 people on there that just absolutely hate it. So you can bring up anything, whether it's your sexuality, your food, your like anything in this world. The color purple is beautiful, and somebody could say, oh, that's the ugliest color. Like, there's polarizing opinions everywhere. So
go check out like moms groups, and like go to any moms group out there and just say
they will like destroy each other.
I was gonna say the words that like bottle feeding is the best, like say something like that and just watch the entire group unravel, or like man, I'm so glad I circumcised my kid. Like say stuff like that and you will see the absolute worst human being like behavior that human beings have to offer. It's insane on the internet. It's insane. But you're right. Yeah. So well, still, that said though, like, do you still think that there are, even as a sort of gay person, private gamer, like, do you think there are still challenges you face, and what other members of the community like face challenges that you might not face that are still really important to like shed light on and talk about?
Yeah, it's you can know that a lot of, depending on what game, it's like testing the waters. Like, there's times where some communities are safe to share that or divulge that information, about your real self, and then there's other communities where it's not. And I don't feel this is true in a online and gaming community sense, but it's also true in real life too. You just don't ever know how people are going to respond to your sexuality. You don't know how they're going to respond to something that is outside of heteronormative culture. You don't know how they're going to take it. So sometimes it's like you have all kinds of different people and members in my community that respond in different ways. Some people are just like, I am the gayest thing out there. I'm going to wear rainbow flags everywhere, and I'm going to, whatever, however they choose to present themselves. You have other people that are like, I'm never going to talk about it. I don't want to bring it up, like, because they're afraid of how somebody might respond. And it's the same, I feel like, in the gaming community. You can choose to share that or divulge that information, and there's a number of number of ways you can do it. I think my favorite way is walking up to somebody and seeing something, be like, girl, I love that pink dress, or whatever it is in a video game, and just seeing seeing how they respond, because you don't even have to say, I'm gay without them making an assumption. Okay, if this guy is commenting on my pink dress and how much he loves the sparkles or ruffles in it or whatever it is, that's a way to like break it to people. But
I've said those things online, and now I feel like I've been misleading people.
probably.
Wait a minute, so that's why?
but it is one of those things that I think it's a challenge. Is that is something that you have to step into these spaces and question. It's not just something you can go into and be like, oh, you can't make an assumption. Oh, everybody's going to be okay with who I love or how I identify. That's an unfortunate part of where our world is and how we've progressed. Is you can't walk into any part of the world. And here in the US and UK and a lot of other countries, European countries, their progress is pretty far with it, and it's a lot easier to bring those things up. But you go to certain other parts of the world, or you play games with people from those parts of the world. I mean, there's not a single gay person in Russia, so that's pretty incredible. I don't know if you've heard. I can't remember who it was that said that, but I don't know if it's Putin or somebody else was like, yeah, that we don't have any gays here, and I'm like, okay,
yeah, that's
all right.
yeah, okay, but
sure you don't.
right, but yeah, I think for me that's a big challenge because it's just like I don't know if I'll ever see it in my life where it's just like you can just fully be yourself with ever having to worry about that being an issue because it's often made an issue when it shouldn't be. I
No, it's
think.
absolutely, and I think the LGBTQ community faces that probably the worst right now, but it is a human experience, right? To sort of
Right.
never know how vulnerable you can be with people because it's a flaw in our programming. The tribalism is like hard coded into our DNA in many ways. That's human beings are always going to, hopefully not always, but for now it's still so very much part of our biological origins that we form these tribes, and anybody outside that tribe we have to compete with, right? So
Right.
anyways, there's something you hit on earlier that I want to kind of pivot into, and you had mentioned the notion that like bring anything up online and you're likely bring any opinion of any kind or mention that you like anything online and you're going to be flamed into oblivion by someone, right? And I think that speaks to a really interesting sort of philosophical question that speaks to why this entire conversation is important in the first place. And so let's pivot into that real quick. Don't spend a lot of time here, but I wanted to ask the question, why do you guys think that attraction, and by extension sexuality, right? Because sexuality is essentially just who you're attracted to. Why do you think that's a relevant part of one's identity? And why is it important to talk about that, even if it makes us uncomfortable? My answer there, just kind of, if I can go first real quick, is just to say that like the reason people get so upset about those things is because of course it's important. The things that we're attracted to, the things that we're drawn to, the things that get us excited, those in many ways are like a core pillar of our identity, right? Like, I think I said to you earlier, Chris, I said, what would you call someone who wears a leather jacket and has a patch that has a Harley sticker on it and listens to heavy metal music, and then gets on a bike, and you call them a biker, right? You identify them as a biker. They probably identify themselves as a biker, right? Like that is just the things we like are the things that we oftentimes sort of root our identity, because at the end of the day, identity is just our ability to set ourselves apart from everybody else and say that we're individuals. And so what better way to do that than the things we like? And I think that sexuality is a part of that. And it's like tragic that for so long the assumption has just been, well, obviously you're attracted to members of the opposite sex, and that's the default. So like being able to now be free in many ways to sort of like claim an identity in that space different from the norm, the default assumption, I think it's really it's empowering for one, and for two, it's so important. So could you guys speak to that idea for a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's something so natural to all of us, is attraction, is being sexually drawn to something. It's not something that any of us really woke up one day and it doesn't matter what our orientation is. None of us really woke up one day and we're like, you know what? That's what I think I'm gonna like. I think I'm gonna go after that. Like there was never a day in your life either where you woke up and you were like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go for a girl. Like that's really what I want. Like it just happens. It's
It's between
natural.
that and elephants. I can't decide. That was a joke. That was a joke, guys. That's the moment you laugh on the podcast. I'm probably cutting that. Cut that.
Right. But anyway, but it's a natural part of being human, and it's not, I think sometimes it's hyper focused on in the gay community. We tend to, oh, they like men that like men, women that like women, whatever that likes whatever. It's such a focus, and it's like, no, that's just a natural part of being human. It's a facet of us, It is important, but it's not our entire identity. Like, just because we're attracted to the same gender doesn't mean that we don't have every other emotion and every other big thing in life to deal with that any other person does. And I think so. I think it's important to know. I think it's important to know that that's a part of us, and it might set us apart in a little way. Like it might be a little different piece of us, but there are so many different people that express themselves in so many different ways that are attracted to so many different things. And I think if we don't understand that there are little differences in those pieces, we can't relate to other people. We can't try and understand them. And that lack of understanding, I feel like, is what separates us sometimes, because we fear the things that we don't understand so much. And it's like, what I don't understand why, what somebody does at home or away from somebody else, especially if it's just trying to love another human being that also wants to love you back. Like, where's the wrong in that, and where's the need to treat them any differently than the person that, I don't know, doesn't want to love anybody, or doesn't want to be in a relationship with anybody, or isn't attracted to anybody, like,
Right.
yeah. So I feel like it's a it's a part of us, and it shouldn't always be focused on, but it is important to note that there are everybody has little differences, but that's part of what diversifies us and makes us so beautiful as humans.
Right. We shouldn't ever want everyone to be the same. The minute we're all the same is the minute we become
hell,
like robots, right? Like or drones or whatever, right? Like, and I don't know. There's definitely something that is like inherent in each of us that needs to be set apart and not in the sense that people often mock, like we're not all special snowflakes. The reality is we're all unique explosions, right? Like we're all very, and it's those differences that make us great. And so, yeah, to label, that's not to say that like we should necessarily like accept all behavior that comes from our differences, but we should acknowledge that it's the differences in us that like make us special, and we should find ways to productively channel those differences. What I mean by that is like to say that like, oh, like it's acceptable for people who, don't like one thing, or people that do like one thing to pursue that avenue of attraction. I think of in spaces of like abuse and stuff like that, right? It's never okay to harm another person.
right?
But if it doesn't harm another person, then by all means, it should be not just enabled, but at the very least accepted and tolerated, right? Like it doesn't have to be fully like celebrated every moment, but it should also never be stopped from being celebrated, right? For the people who are a part of it, as long as it's not harming another person, I think.
Yeah.
And even the people that do maybe have predispositions to harming other people, like we need to acknowledge A, the trauma that drives that, and B, the differences in those people that can be like channeled into something productive, if that makes sense. That can be sort of like drawn, the gems in the rough that can be drawn out of those spaces and brought into good places, I think. It's very important to sort of acknowledge that like people aren't just no one's an angel and no one's a demon, right? Like we're people. And everyone goes through more or less the same pains and more or less the same joys in life. So
yeah, that's like where I always draw. A lot of people like beat on cancel culture and they like hate on it and they're like dismissing it because of its problems. There are problems with it. There are. But when people come out and say harmful things about other human beings, and then that riles and creates a platform for other people to then act on and create havoc and pain and vandalism and all these things, like that's where we kind of gotta rein that in. And when I first read this question, I was like, I don't really understand the question. And then when you did articulate it, you kind of flattened our identities as human beings with our tastes in entertainment medium. And while like our culture pack mentality will behave similarly to those things, I think like who you are as a human being and how you want to live your life has a little bit more gravity to it. And so I think you guys both articulated your answers wonderfully. Thank you for that clarification. Because going into this question,
absolutely.
you might notice Termite's not speaking a lot. I'm like, I don't really know where we're going with this question.
Yeah.
Why is our attraction a relevant part of one's identity? Like, I like Star Wars, but I'm not Luke Skywalker. Like,
Right.
but yes,
No, but the things you like really
are.
do. Like, again, it's easy to minimize it and say it's inconsequential, but like we all know it's not, right? Like,
Exactly.
let's be real. Star Wars fans truly seem to root their identity in how Star Wars goes, right? Right? So
They kind of seem to.
It as silly as it can be, sometimes it really is. Like, people are their passions, if that makes sense. No matter how.
The biggest difference, though, is if I walk into Starbucks with an Empire shirt logo on, no one's going to treat me any differently at all. They're just going to be like, oh, he likes Star Wars. And they'll
Well,
make my
they
latte
would've-
perfectly.
Unless a rebel lover walks into the room,
Yeah.
and then you might have a different story. It's just like in World of Warcraft, when you'd see somebody in a Horde shirt, you'd be like, oh man, those filthy Horde. Like, if you played Alliance, right? Like, Dan, how many times do we walk into like somewhere and we see somebody in a Horde shirt and be like, oh man, those dirty,
We'll
filthy Horde.
starting fights. Yep.
Right.
Well,
But
no,
can you-
but you know, but
Can
think,
you
no, no,
compare
I-
that, Chris, to walking into a public space in a small town holding hands with your partner?
Oh
like-
God, yeah, the amount of anxiety that
There you go.
I mean,
No, you're right. You're right. But like,
Yep.
I still think that it may not be a direct comparison, but I think the instincts behind them are still similar. Like, think about the I mean, you're watching Stranger Things and they're hitting on the satanic panic that happened around D&D at that time, right? Like, D&D, as inconsequential as it gets, but someone walking in with a D&D manual into a random restaurant in the 80s may have experienced not the same, but a similar amount of hate and malignment that
they would not want to eat there anymore. That's
right,
true.
exactly,
Right,
exactly.
right.
So that's the thing is it can be still something that, like, I think the tribalism and the instincts, as well as the desire to identify with those things, are still very, very much come from the same, or at least a similar part of the human soul, so to speak. Wow, that was good. That was good, guys. I'm glad we had that conversation. I want to make sure we have time to hit this last couple of questions, so we're kind of gonna merge them here. Zooming out a bit and getting out of our own personal experiences and talking about the industry at large, there are and have been for the last 10 or so years, probably more than that, probably 2 decades, a lot of conversations about how diversity should be handled by video game companies. How do you feel issues like representation of LGBTQ characters or other issues in regards to how gaming relates to this community? How do you think that those have been handled? And just in general, how do you, Chris, in this case, as a gay person, how do you feel like it's been handled and dealt with by companies, by the industry, more so
Right.
than like the culture?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like some games have done a really good job. Some companies have done a really good job, and then others not so much or not at all.
Mhm.
There's some that are very toxic. Cough Blizzard, cough cough.
Yeah.
But I feel like diversity is not very well handled in video games. I think we're doing better. I think we're starting to improve and starting. It's the same with the movie industry and a lot of other industries. I think we've been stuck on this heteronormative state for so long, white heteronormative state for so long. It's like I feel like that needs to change, but I feel like it needs to change in a genuine way, and I feel
Yeah.
like that starts with having companies whose workers care, who's down to the very heart of that company, who works for them. And I feel like I'm going to harp on one particular company, or not harp, but I'm going to praise a certain company. I feel like the ArenaNet, the ones who've produced Guild Wars 2 and that whole franchise, are a genuine company when it comes to representation for the LGBTQ plus community. And I feel like they have always been genuine in how they portrayed that. They haven't had like a crazy number of gay, lesbian, bisexual characters, but they have had some. And I feel like they've done it in such a way that it's like not this big shocker, not this big reveal. Oh, this person's gay. Like, it's never been like that. It's just this seemingly transition. Oh, she happens to love her, and it's been very well talked about. Not only that, but they've had pride events in the game for their players. They've had pride parades within their games. They've official events and events, that involve the community. It's Ooh, okay. So here we go. And this might be a segue into the following up question, but nowadays, or probably what I feel like was it within the past like 5, 6, 7 years, companies love to just start turning things rainbow and be like, look at us, we're a great ally. We really support, the LGBTQ plus community. And it's like it is very evident to me that they don't really care that much. They're doing it for publicity, or they're doing it to say, hey, let's check this box off and show how friendly we are. And I feel like a lot of games are maybe now starting to realize that and catch on to that, but they're trying to check a box as opposed to, can we genuinely care about this community and can we represent them well? I have yet to see very many companies that I feel do that. A lot of them just don't even talk about it, or it's never brought up. But yeah, I feel like the company that I'm really pleased with is ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2. They just have it's been a part of it. They even from very early on, they do these every time they had an expansion, they do these guild casts where they would talk about the creation of their characters. They talk about the music, they talk about all the elements and the people of their party that, brought everything together to create a game. And I think their first expansion, there was a trans music composer that made beautiful, gorgeous music, but they showed that person, and they introduced that person and said, they didn't say, oh, here's our trans person that's doing our music here. you
There's a
know
token,
um
tokenism.
they just introduced her. This is her name, and this is who she is, and this is what she does, and she makes beautiful music, and we love her. And it was presented in that way, like, this is family, this is who's a part of our team. you know um and it was never done in this, like, we need to check a box for you guys. And I feel like, I've watched some companies try to swing into to supporting the LGBTQ plus community, and the way they do it is, let's change our logo, make it rainbow. Happy Pride, everyone. Here's
Yeah.
here's a few random objects we're gonna sell that are rainbow colored now.
It's like they're like, oh, Pride has been trending on Twitter for the last 3 years. June,
Right,
let's hop on that
right.
bandwagon. Yeah, it's almost exactly what it's like, an algorithmic thing.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
another thing too, I think, is like, do you actually partner with a community that is trying to improve the lives of
yeah,
kids, queer kids across the country? Is there anything that you are doing? Because some companies do. They're the Trevor Project. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. You might want to look it up, but it's a group that aims to help kids, queer kids across, the U.S. who are in need of support. And it's like, if you have something where proceeds are going to help that organization, like, okay, I know that you actually really care and you're not just doing this for your company's profit.
yeah, yeah.
So, but anyway, that's that's a little bit
No, that's
about
great.
that.
That's a great answer, and you basically answered two questions in one. So I don't even feel the need to ask the next question.
Well,
Which
I want to bounce some thoughts off of Chris as well, being a gamer in the gaming space. So I had to look it up because I didn't have it memorized. But Gone Home set the world on fire in like 2013. It was made by an indie studio. So indie being a big key here. In the past, before the indie games kind of took off, you would require a publisher to fund your studio. Publishers don't like to take risks, so they see something come across LGBTQ and say that's too risky. Nope. And then so the indie movement has happened, and there's a plethora of indie games now out there that have all made games that all show representation because they're made by people in the LGBTQ space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very new. I mean, 2013 was 9 years ago, and I only use that as an example because it made the most noise, it made the most waves. I'm sure there's more that I'm ignorant of, but it seems like on its heels was 2014's Last of Us Left Behind, which was a DLC focusing on Ellie. Turns out that she has a girlfriend, and she was trying to kind of pursue a relationship with a teen girl, and that was like well received. Naughty Dog, that's like AAA level, Sony funded. Okay, now Sony's funding studios that are doing this. Naughty Dog made up of diverse people like making things, and I think you hit on that nail on the head. Is like, we need diverse people in the room where it happens. Yes, to
Right.
take a Hamilton quote, and you want to be in the room where it happens.
you
The decision makers.
You can't help yourself, can you?
I can't. And like all of the things in our society, especially in capitalist America, like cause that to not happen. And that's like women's rights and parental rights, like the ability to take maternity leave, or like equal pay across men and female, and then equal places in the workspace, equal opportunities for diverse folks, and like rooting out all of the bigotry and all of the sexism from the patriarchal society of like capitalism is all like woven into these stopping and oppressing diverse people into that room. And like that's where the rubber hits the road. That's what the movement that needs to happen. It's like these companies are changing their Twitter tags and handles and things, but no, we need to like unionization is actually beneficial to that, because now they have like they can unionize and create something that has power and clout and can make decisions and change corporate strategies. So all of what I just said, Chris, what do you think about that aspect? Because that's kind of a different side of the coin than what you touched on.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of indie games, to be honest, so there's I haven't seen that aspect in gaming myself. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that like you start at the root of things, and that's how you kind of, I don't know, like I think more people coming together that are diverse in different ways and just being together in a space where they create something that's wonderful.
Yep.
It splashes down obviously into the game that you create, into the worlds that you create.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm 100% agree with that.
Okay. And can I ask one more question as like a caveat to this question?
No, you cannot.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Go ahead,
Chris. Have you ever been offended by an attempt to represent LGBTQ that did not go well? A poorly done game, character, story, whatever.
No. Well,
okay.
Well, there is one question.
Yeah.
So, how many of you guys know Birdo's story? Does anybody know Birdo from
Mario?
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
What is this story?
Yes,
Birdo, I know who Birdo is, but yes,
the origin.
The pink,
yeah.
Okay,
yes.
But do you know what
it's
originally
fictional? Yeah.
No, educate me.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I'll be able to do it. Justo. Okay, Justice. Well,
Birdo.
Do you know, Termite, that Birdo is a male, as written, is actually a male character?
Hold on, it looks like
he's getting a Birdo something. Yeah, he's getting some.
I'm getting a book. Yeah, but no, I did not know that. So
yep,
Birdo is apparently a male.
Birdo's origin is, I guess, maybe it is. One could maybe consider Birdo one of the early prototype transsexual characters in video games, but not in a good way, as in like it was clearly the Nintendo developers who developed Birdo were clearly mocking. Yep. Like it's very much meant to be sort of a mocking representation of trans people. Because yes, Chris, you may have more details than I do, but the bottom line is I've heard this before that like Birdo is canonically a male character that just likes to dress up like.
Yeah, it was originally started as a male character, but then it was given a female voice, and it kind of changed into this female character, but it is kind of looked at as the first transgender character, video game character.
Transgender. I'm sorry, I think I said something else.
Yep. So, but it like Dan said, it wasn't represented well.
It sort of was the butt of a joke. Like it was presented as a joke, as opposed to
right.
presented as like an actual genuine representation of transgendered people.
Right.
Interesting. The book that I was getting is the Super Mario Encyclopedia, because I wanted to know who wrote this. Dark Horse published it. Came out pretty recently. But anyway, I looked up Birdo, and Mario's childhood rival, no, that's Wario. They shoot eggs out of their mouths is the description. So a non-obvious pronoun, they, when talking about a Birdo. Yeah. Which is interesting. Like maybe they tried to cover it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Just go read about it sometime.
Yeah.
But
I think the trans community has more or less rejected Birdo as they don't embrace Birdo as a trans icon.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way, not because of the way the character was written, but more so the way that Nintendo disrespects the character.
Yeah.
Because of that portrayal. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm reading here is sort of just basically like, Googling Birdo trans representation and scrolling through. It's like, it seems to be a pretty controversial topic from that regard, in regards to the way they respect or disrespect the character.
But anyway, that would be my only to your question. That would be my only
fascinating. Yeah,
that I've experienced.
I got a lot of work to do.
Right.
Research.
Well, we don't have time for the most important question of the podcast, which is, of course, which video game character is 100% in the closet. So the answer is Master Chief, and we'll break that down in part 2, I guess, where we'll spend the entire time just talk. Oh, Solid Snake. Yep, that's definitely he's definitely in the closet as well, I think.
Or under the box, whatever you want to say.
Right, in the box. Yeah, that's for sure. So, well, that is it. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Again, very, very. Feel like I learned something and grew. and I hope our listeners did as well. And yeah, just thank you for taking the time and the vulnerability to talk to us about these things. And that is the episode. So listeners, we want to hear your feedback, unless your feedback is particularly toxic. If you don't have something productive and kind to say, then just go ahead and unfollow us, because we're not interested. Other than that, we would love to hear your thoughts on this issue. We would love to hear from anybody else who may be a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and hear what your experiences are as well, and share those in a space that we hope is safe for you to do so. And you can share all those thoughts and more in the places that Termite will tell you about right now.
First, though, thanks, Chris, again for your vulnerability. Penguin kind of glossed over that, but just showing up, talking about this publicly, and opening up about your story. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. And thank you for coming here and doing that. So
yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Let us know how you can play with Chris in Guild Wars 2 over at 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website, where you can find links to all of our social media outlets, as well as our podcast services, if you will: Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter. We have a Discord. I know I'm saying all the weird things. And our podcast services are Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. We have an RSS feed link. You can throw it into anything you would like. We are everywhere. If we are not somewhere you want us to be, let us know. We'll put ourselves there just for you. And you can get on our Discord server and chat, fire up a conversation, give us your thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, and ideas, and let us know what you think. And don't forget about our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, where we review games at least once a month. We'll do a 2-hour live stream, and we will discuss breakdown.
Except for
July. We're taking the month of July off because we are indisposed pretty much the entire month.
He is indisposed pretty much the entire month. And I'm not going to bother with streaming by myself. We are everywhere. We are omnipresent. We haven't quite reached omniscience or omnipotence yet. We're working on it. But omnipresence, we got that one down. So don't turn around, because we're behind you at all times. Once again, thanks, Chris. Do you have any desire to make yourself and places where your thoughts and ideas can be known, or would you prefer to keep your life and online interactions private? If so, that is also fine. But if not, we can share your Twitter or whatever.
I don't have many handles, but yeah, no, anybody can add me or friend me.
Great. What are those handles in which we can add you or friend you?
Oh, good question.
It's fine. If there's downtime, we can cut it.
And are you in our Discord server already?
He's in our Discord server.
Our D&D one.
He's in mine. Yeah. It's all mine.
All right. So my Instagram is empath6, EMPATH6, Christopher Chase. That's my Instagram. And then I don't know. There's a number on Facebook, right?
Facebook. I'm not quite sure you want Facebook people. Great. Well, great. Yeah, please follow him on Instagram. And yeah, next week we are going to be doing an episode about the jump from 2D games to 3D games. Franchises that made that jump successfully, and franchises that did not, regrettably, make that jump successfully, and how possibly they could improve in the future. And of course, as well, don't forget that you can find me doing my thing in D&D at the Twitch stream Advantage or Die. So I love that one out. Termite, thanks. I'm kidding. It's my thing. Anyways, we'll be here next week to talk about 2D to 3D franchises. And we once again thank you, Chris, for your input and your valuable time and sharing with us. So we are very appreciative that you took this time. So check him out, check us out, and as Termite always says,
we'll see you next week.